All right, so today we have Liv with us. She's a volleyball player. She's having some shoulder issues, so we're just going to do some special tests just to kind of assess it, see what we have going on. We're going to do everything bilateral, of course, starting from uninjured side, moving to your injured side. What side's injured, Liv?
This one.
This side. Okay, so we'll start left side. So we're going to start with the crank test or anterior apprehension test. So I'm going to bring her arm up to 90 degrees, and then I'm essentially just going to bring her into that external rotation. And I'm looking for any apprehension or any resistance to the movement by her. So she has no resistance, no apprehension, so that's a negative test. So that's the uninjured side. We're going to do our injured side here now. So same thing, supporting that a little bit, bringing her down to that external rotation, very slowly looking at her for any apprehension or any resistance, not feeling any of that, not seeing any of that. So that's again a negative. So that's a negative apprehension. A positive would indicate anterior GH joint instability. Negative means that there's no instability right now. We're now going to move into a relocation test. So we're essentially going to do the same thing, but we're going to try to keep that GH head in the proper position. So if we had a positive apprehension test, we're moving into this to see if it's related to that GH head position or if it's something else. So we're going to be in the same position, but instead I'm going to put a posterior force into the GH joint anterior portion. And I'm going to do the same thing and seeing if this relieves her pain or her resistance to movement or her apprehension to movement. So she has the same movement. So that's going to be a negative test because there was no pain being relieved. I'll explain that more in a second. So we're going to do the same thing. So once again, putting that posterior force in and bringing that back, looking for any apprehension or any pain or any resistance to movement. So she's good on that too. So she didn't have any pain to start with the crank test, but if she did have a positive crank test, a positive test here would be that that relocation relieved her pain or relieved her apprehension to the movement or relieved her resistance. So that would mean that the impingement or the problem was coming from the GH head moving improperly. A negative would mean that the problem is within the GH head, or not within the GH head. I hate this. Okay, and then now we're going to do our last one, which is our posterior apprehension test. So I'm going to bring her arm up to 90 and internally rotated. I'm going to support behind the GH joint. And then we're simply going to push into a posterior force, looking again for any apprehension or resistance to movement. That's a negative. She didn't have any apprehension or resistance to movement. And then we're going to do the injured side. So again, supporting that posterior GH joint and then putting that axial load in. Again, looking for apprehension or any resistance to movement. Again, that's a negative. She had no apprehension, no resistance. A positive, meaning that she did have apprehension and resistance, could indicate that there's some posterior instability of the GH joint.